Hello everybody, Lawrence Fleming again. It is still beautiful out. It was a little cold this morning and it was yesterday morning, kind of the last of winter holding on. The jet stream brings cold down from the north, dips down here and hits us and then goes away. We're told in Georgia not to plant until after Easter. Easter's late. So, the end of this week, rush out and plant, at least historically. Now, in these crazy changing times, it could snow from May through August, and I don't think anybody would bat an eye too much. They wouldn't like it, but I don't think they'd bat an eye. It's like, what do you expect? In Georgia, if you don't like the weather, wait 15 minutes. Okay, this is my last night at this campsite. I'm going to be cleaning things to get them packed away. I've got till noon tomorrow to get out. I haven't decided which campsite to go to. Part of the problem that we have during these times, courtesy of our Big C money handout, is too many people out with nothing to do, doing absolutely nothing but taking up space. And they're not used to being out. They've got their new RVs and they're out trashing up the place, playing their music too loud, leaving beer bottles everywhere. Go home. Trash your own living room, not God's. Okay. So I don't know where I'm going to be able to go yet. Pretty much anything within 2-hour drive of Atlanta is full on the weekends. Drying out, we get the pollen back. On the weekends, I can't find a place to stay. So what I might have to do is I might have to find a motel on the weekends and then finish camping during the week. That's not the way I really want to do it, but I'm going to do what I have to do. Now the other option, but I don't have an RV that I could really boondoggle in. With my tent, I have a solar-powered charging system that I can use to get by for a day or so, maybe two. I'm going to try that. So boondocking is another option. There's a couple of apps for looking at free campsites. Most of them are going to be BLM type or Bureau of Land Management or government sites that you can get into. We're not in a hunting season right now other than turkeys. I don't like going out during deer season because those long-range guns, you can't see what's at the other end. Turkeys, you got to get up pretty close. It's past the time for them to be really out. Most people go out the first week or so, which is the first part of April. And then after that, the animals get spooked. If you can't make the first week, your likelihood of getting your game is not very good. But I want to get to a lake where I can do some fishing. So that's what's on my list. Okay, a couple of quick headlines, and then I'm going to read some scriptures about today and what's going on. Russia is again flexing their muscles because there's nobody to tell them to shut up. Which one was it? One of the countries, Saudi Arabia, made fun of, literally made fun of. You don't do that to a foreign leader, but they made fun of our leader, talking about how he's senile and everything. And I'm not going to go into details other than to say that they had a good time on their state-run media. Now, we know we're not going to be in the end times directly because we're not mentioned in the Bible. And we have done a good job of keeping the bad guys at bay. You can't really stop terrorism unless you're willing to go after the host countries. We learned in Vietnam, China was fighting the war, but we were doing it in Vietnam, killing the Vietnamese. That's not how you want to fight a war. We should have gone after China then and put them in their place and taught them how to behave in this world. But since we didn't, now they're helping the bad guys. China and India right now are pretty much keeping Russia afloat. They're buying from them arms, oil. Russia doesn't really have the economy to afford a World War III. That's why they're not doing as well as we thought they could. They've got big weapons, but they're not using them because they're trying not to destroy the land because they want to eventually run it and tax it and do all the things that a host country would do. They're also working their way towards Israel. I don't know if Putin's trying out for two jobs. Is he going to be Gog and the Antichrist? I don't know, but he's coming into Israel saying, you need to give the Temple Mount to Syria. Well, first off, it is Jordan who's been given the right to manage it. So to give it to Syria, I think you're going to be looking at a Muslim war. But that ain't going to happen anyway because it is God's chosen people that live there. They have Jerusalem. And I don't know why some idiot gave them control of the Temple Mount in the first place. They were not looking very far in advance. And it hasn't been that long. They gained control of the Temple Mount in 67 when they had the 67 war. Giving it back to the Muslims was the stupidest thing Israel and their leaders could have done. Every time, land for peace, land for peace. It lasts that long. And then they're back to fighting again. I think they've learned their lesson. You can only play Charlie Brown in the football two or three times, and then you figure out what's going on. Smart people might figure it out the first time. Politicians take longer. But anyhow, Russia's getting their eyes on the Temple Mount. Of course they're not going to get it. They'd have to take it by force. Because one, Jordan wouldn't like it, and the other nations wouldn't like it. And there's a lot of stuff going on. I follow a couple of Palestinian sites just to see what their view is. And of course, it's all hatred. What have I got coming in here? I got my phone turned off, but something still came in. But anyhow, it's going to be a hotbed for a while, and as long as we're out of it, there's nothing stopping. Israel can basically stop war one-on-one with just about any country. And they do have nukes, plenty of them. Not as many as Russia does, but, nuclear weapons are sort of like, well, we'll let God sort them out, and I'll just drop one over here. They're so dangerous that nobody's willing to use them, at least until now. But we're going to see where we're at. What's going on? Why is it not happening? Why are we still here? I've said it before and I'll keep saying it. It's got to be something catastrophic. There's no need for a rapture if we're just going to nonchalantly fly up to the clouds. It's going to be like, as we're looking back, oh my God, literally. That's the only reason for a rapture. Christ has never been raptured. There's no need for it. But we're going to start our reading in Revelation 12. And I might go into 13. We've already had all the seals and everything. It's just kind of a culmination. And are we there now? I don't know. Like I said, the time from beginning to end is only 7 years. So if it were to start tomorrow or today, it's only 7 years until Christ comes back for good. With the rapture somewhere in the beginning. I keep thinking it's pre-trib, but I don't know. There's no need for us to be around during the tribulation. He's switching from the church, the Christians, back to his chosen people, the Jews. We don't need to be around. Why subject us to all of this? Why subject the bride of Christ to torment? It's supposed to be a happy occasion. Now, when is everything happening, as far as the wedding feast and all that, like we've seen? There's a good movie out, Before the Wrath, that talks about it. Are they happening in sequence, just like a normal wedding, or is there time between? And how much time? The normal return for a son to come back for his bride is a year. What's a year in God's terms? Don't know. And that's to come back and then have the wedding feast. Now, how long before the wedding feast? That still has to be catered. Got to bring people in to run it. The family's not going to completely run it. They wouldn't have time to do anything else, because there's going to be a bunch of people all coming for food and wine. But let's take a look at Revelation 12. Now, the first part of it we've talked about for the past few years, because we had the sign. Now, is it possible to have another one? I don't know why God would, but anything's possible. But I think that what we saw a few years back was the sign. But we're still here. But if they're in order, and that was the true sign, then what's coming up next could be at any moment. Okay. Revelation 12, I'm going to start at verse 1. Now a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed in the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a garland of 12 stars. There's some planets in that mix, because they're wandering stars, remember? Then being with child, she cried out in labor and in pain to give birth. And another sign appeared. Behold, a great fiery red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 diadems on the heads. Whenever you're talking about heads like this and on these figurative monsters, the fact that it's a dragon associates it with Satan. The fact that they've got heads tells you that there's countries involved. Countries with diadems, with crowns, with their leaders. My job isn't really to teach Revelation. My job is to tell you that this is all coming. This was predicted by John after Jesus was gone. This is not looking back. Some of this could look back at Christ's first coming, but it's more likely his second coming that we're looking forward to. Otherwise, there's no reason to tell it again. It's already been told. Okay. His tail drew a third of the stars of heaven and threw them to earth. What stars? His angels. His army, basically. He throws them to earth. We've got one of the biggest annual meteor showers going on now. And there's another one that's a little south of the hemisphere that's overlapping. I think the 22nd is the peak of it. And the dragon stood before the woman who was ready to give birth, to devour her child as soon as it was born. She bore a male child, who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up to God and his throne. Then the woman fled into the wilderness, where she has a place prepared by God, that they should feed her there for 1,260 days. That number sound familiar? Again, I'm not going to give you predictions off of this. This is prophetic, and I'm not licensed to teach that. I'm just giving you the facts that you can maybe think about. But the bottom line is that this is what's happening, or has to happen yet. And in verse 7, a war broke out in heaven. That's a significant thing. And his angels fought with the dragon. Michael and his angels fought with the dragon. In the past, Michael has refused to fight Satan. because he is powerful. He's the most powerful angel and the ruler of the earth. God has got it. He's got more power than his little finger than the two of them put together. But pitting them up against each other, we need to thank Michael for his courage. And the dragon and his angels fought, but they did not prevail. Now remember, he sent a third of his angels away, so he only had 2/3. That might have been a mistake. Did not prevail, nor was a place found for them in heaven any longer. So the great dragon was cast out, the serpent of old, called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world. He was cast to the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. Then I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, "Now salvation and strength and the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ have come. For the accuser of his brethren, who accused them before our God day and night, has been cast down." Satan has been going up and down. Of course, he'd rather live up there, but he comes down here because he wants to be ruler of earth down here. And he's been going up to God and being a tattletale on you and telling him all the things that you've been doing. Well, we have an adversary up there, and Satan doesn't know how to deal with that, but he's going to still be Satan. If we belong to Christ, he's going to stick up for us. And that's why we're still here. Okay, now salvation and strength in the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ has come. For the accuser of our brethren who accused them day and night has been cast down. And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. And they did not love their lives to the death. Therefore rejoice, heavens, O heavens, and you who dwell in them. This is where you need to pay attention. Woe to the inhabitants of earth, for the devil has come down to you, having great wrath, because he knows that his time is short. He's mad, and he wants to take it out on somebody. Now when the dragon saw that he had been cast to the earth, he persecuted the woman, and the woman, by the way, has got to be Jerusalem, who gave birth to the male child, or to Israel. But the woman was given 2 wings of an eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness of her place, where she is nourished for a time, times, and half a time. Sound familiar again? From the presence of the serpent. So the serpent spewed out water out of his mouth like a flood after the woman, trying to harm her, that he might cause her to be carried away by the flood. But the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened its mouth up and swallowed up the flood which the dragon had spewed out of its mouth. How much of this is real and figurative? That's with prophetic writings you don't know. It could be both. Don't know. There's a big sea just to the west of Israel. Wouldn't take much. There's also a couple of lakes, the Dead Sea and the Galilean Sea. They're big enough to be called seas, but they're essentially big lakes. Okay, and the dragon was enraged with the woman, and he went to make war with the rest of her offspring, who keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. Before God's wrath even comes to earth, Satan's going to be down here doling out his wrath. Do you really want to be here for either one of them? Accept Christ now and get out of here when the rapture happens, which has to happen before that. We're not meant to go through that. We're not meant for wrath. So the rapture timing has to be in the beginning. Pre-trib, maybe just right into it, right when it starts. Is this the start of the tribulation? Well, there's other stuff going on. There's all the other stuff going on before it. So where is the start of the tribulation? How will we know it? Will we recognize the other seals? There's a lot of death before we even get to this part. I want to get out of here pre-trib. I don't want to go out, certainly not mid-trib. You deal with all of Satan's wrath before we get to God's. It's got to be very early on or totally pre-trib. And we haven't even had the Gog-Magog war yet, or Damascus hasn't been destroyed. There's a lot of things that haven't happened yet. Now, all the things that happened up to this point in Revelation will easily fit within the 7-year time period. But where are we in that? When is it going to start? We don't know. We're not supposed to know. If we knew, we'd screw it up. That's why God doesn't tell us half of what we're supposed to do ahead of time. We go, I can do that. I don't need your help. I'll call you when I need you. That's not the way you treat a friend. You do everything together. You may ask God, what can I do to help? And if he gives you something, do it joyfully. Even if it is, go clean out those toilets. Whatever it is, do it for God with a cheerful heart. Okay, I'm going to do a little bit into this, but not too much. This is chapter 13. Then I stood on the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rising up out of the sea, having 7 heads, 10 horns, and on the horns 10 crowns. And on his heads a blasphemous name. Now the beast which I saw was like a leopard, and his feet were like the feet of a bear, and his mouth like the mouth of a lion, and the dragon gave him power. The Antichrist. Could be. And I saw one of his heads. Again, this is prophetic, and I'm not going to be able to tell you. I don't think God wants Satan to know any of this, let alone us. So this will be here as something we can read afterwards. All we have to do is know that there's a lot of bad stuff coming, and we don't want to be here. We have a rapture to save us from it. You say, well, what about the people that say there's only one rapture and that's at the end? Well, that's because they don't read the Bible in its entirety. Yes, there's a rapture at the end. There's also one in the beginning. There's a couple in the middle. The word harpazo is used a number of times, but not with Jesus. Frankly, I'd like to be around and see the Antichrist fight the 2 witnesses, but I don't want to have to go through all the other stuff. So we'll be able to watch it from heaven. Okay. The dragon gave him his power, his throne, and great authority. And I saw one of the heads, it had been mortally wounded. Remember, the Antichrist has to be wounded. And all the world marveled. Been mortally wounded. And his deadly wound was healed. That would make the world look to this person with a bit of authority. And all the world marveled and followed the beast. Like I said, the Antichrist has to do something to get the world's attention, to be able to come out and say, I am the Christ. Because that's what he's going to do. He's going to claim to be Christ. And all the stuff that happened before, that was him. That's what the Muslims are waiting for. They're waiting for Jesus to come back too, but for them. So when the Antichrist shows up, they're going to buy into him as the Christ, and he will allow the Temple Mount to be managed by both, and they will get a temple. And the Antichrist will be the one responsible for that, because the Muslims will be following him, the Jews will be following him, and we'll be out of here. Okay. Like I said, there's so much going on, and it's hard to Hard to put a name to all this stuff. People have tried. People have used the Bible to try to predict when all these things are going to happen, and they've failed time and time again. I don't blame them for trying. I would try too. But, I'm trying to read it to you the way it is without giving you any inflection on it. I've even stepped over a little bit going, well, this has got to be the Antichrist. It sounds like him. We know that those things do happen to him. But these are in the future, not our future. Keep waiting. There's so much getting ready to just kick off. I keep saying this. What's going to be the starting gun? Russia's a little preoccupied with Ukraine, but what they're doing is they're making alliances. They're making alliances with Iran, Syria, the radical Muslim states. When it's their time to come down and attack, they will have allies. And they will supply the fuel to get everybody there because they've got control of the fuel in Europe. They don't have natural gas yet, but Israel does, and Russia wants it. Russia wants access to the Mediterranean so they can trade. With the United States going to sleep, Russia wants to take over everything, trade routes, everything. They want to be the big dog on top now. And they will be until God stops them, because nobody else will. They're already big enough now to have the most nuclear power that I just reached my 25-minute limit. Okay. I guess I should stop talking so I don't bore you anymore. I start to ramble when I get to the end, because I feel like just chit-chatting with everybody. I'm excited for these times, but I don't know where we're going. It's like the pilot in the airplane. I've got good news and bad news. Tell me if you saw this joke. I know who watched it till the end. The pilot goes, I've got good news and bad news. The bad news is we're lost. The good news is we're making good time. Well, that's kind of how I feel right now. We're clipping along pretty good, but we don't know where we're going. But everything else is fine, so why worry? Okay, until we meet in the skies. God bless.